as there were 3 candidate constituencies. And that's an important thing to remember. If we had one of those, and it was, let's just stay within the room, a Liberal Democrat and a Conservative, and there was an independent standing on a very independent ticket, the majority of second preferences of the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats could very well have been for that independent. But they don't count. They don't count because his choice goes. Because he was in 3rd place, and his second preferences are what actually puts your MP in place. So don't believe that it's fair, because it's not. The other thing is as well, it's a very fascinating system. We've got here an Australian ballot paper. It's got 22 candidates on it. The most that we had in the last election was 12. But yesterday we tell us it's going to encourage more. Under this system, technically, and with a voting paradox, which is quite common, the 21st in the first round can win. Fair? No. So, why does it make me angry? Well, I'm dyslexic. Over 70%, in fact 71.54% of the constituencies in the last election had 6 or more candidates. People who are dyslexic, dyspraxic with learning difficulties, people with early onset dementia, people with visibility difficulties, your parents, your grandparents will struggle to complete that ballot paper. I don't think, laugh if you like, laugh if you like, really seriously laugh. Laugh and make fun of people with disability. That's why I have a disability. I can tell you, I've lived with it for over 50 years. That sequencing is difficult. Now, you don't find it difficult, and in this learning institution, what have we got? We've got a lot of people here who don't have dyslexia. Why? Because they don't manage to get to university like I do. Some people do. Some people luckily do. Okay? But those of you who do, just be clear to your colleagues how difficult it can be. It's not as fair as it might seem. I just want to attack as well the tactical voting claim. Because here's the tactical voting claim. It doesn't introduce tactical voting. This is taken from the Australian election, and this helps people with their sequencing. It tells them where to put their numbers. And that's because where you put the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 22nd preference is important. It's important because unless somebody actually wins over first past the post, then those preferences are the ones that count. So, I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's simple. I don't think it's easy to understand, because I don't think you know necessarily where you go or what you do. But when people come out of an election not remembering how or who they voted for, that's also problematic. So what's the S2AB solution to that? I know because I've asked them.
Got it. In fairness to time.
I stop me. Yep, right now. They tell me, don't use the other numbers. Well, guess what that is? First past the post.
Thank you very much, Don. I now ask our second Don to finish the debate on the yes vote.
Thank you very much. Listen, politicians are not particularly popular, regardless of which party you come from. Somebody once said, politicians, like babies' nappies, should be changed regularly for exactly the same reason. And this is one opportunity where the politicians are not going to make the decision. This is your opportunity to decide whether or not you want to continue with a clapped-out, outdated, unfair voting system, or you want to move to a fairer system that AB brings. It is ridiculous that in this country, fewer than a third of members of Parliament are elected with the majority support in their constituency. Fewer than a third get over 50% of the vote. And that means the majority of people in this country under the current system are currently represented by people they didn't vote for. That simply cannot be right. We're told that the move to AV is incredibly complicated. What we're doing is we're changing from having to put a cross on a ballot paper to putting 1, 2, 3, 4 on a ballot paper. And yes, you may be right, Don, there'll be 1 or 2 people who may have some difficulty with that, but I genuinely believe that they can be helped so that they can do it. It is not a complex move. So this is a simple system that gives a much fairer system. It's one that's already used in the election of leaders of the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats. It's used to decide which is the best picture for the Oscars. It's used by nearly all trade unions in deciding on all of their major decisions and so on. And if you carry on with what we've currently got, you will carry on with a system in which fewer than 2% of the electorate actually determine the outcome of the general election, because it is just those few people in those marginal seats that actually make the difference. Whereas if you move to an AV system, then you move to a system where every vote counts. It will get rid of the idea of the safe seat. It means, as Megan has already said, that people who want your vote will have to reach out to all members in the community, because even if you're not going to put them as first, you're going to put them as second. And yes, it does make a difference, and it was amazing to hear Don say in his contribution that it matters where you put your second, third and fourth preference. He's said it is important. Well, yes, it is important that people's second and third preferences should be taken into account if the person that they wanted as their first preference is the one who comes out on top at the start of things. So I genuinely believe that this is a once-in-a-generation lifetime to move away from an unfair voting system, a system in which the vast majority of people's votes don't count, to one that can mean every vote will count, where we'll get rid of the nonsense of a situation, for instance, in 2005, where we had a majority Labour government with only 35% of the vote. That cannot be right. It cannot be right that the majority of people in this room, if you go out to vote, your vote won't count. And maybe that explains, because people feel that their vote doesn't count, why 29 million people who had the right to vote in the last general election simply didn't bother. They didn't feel it was worth going out because their views are not being taken account of. AV will change that. I hope you'll vote yes.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you for organising this debate, because it is important that people know what's going on. And first of all, I want to defend first past the post. It's a good system, it's a straightforward system, it works. You go out and vote, the party with the most votes wins, that's it. And we hear a lot of talk about how unfair it is that 2/3 of the seats don't get over 50%. But this government, this coalition government, if you add the parties together, has 59% of the electorate giving it a mandate on first past the post. That seems to me a pretty good mandate. So what do they talk about? They always talk about 2005, when Labour won with a big majority on 35% of the vote. Academic studies suggest that under AV, Labour would have had a bigger majority in 2005 than it did, at the cost of Tory seats. And if you go back to 1997, okay, well, if you want fairness, you can't assume it's always fair when the Tories get fewer seats. That is partisanship. And I don't object to partisanship, I just want to identify it. If you look at 1997, John Curtis, extremely distinguished psephologist, calculated the Conservatives would have got 70 rather than 164 seats on about 31% of the vote, and that Labour's majority, instead of being 180, would be heading way above 200. So it's not a more proportional